Digital ID has been scrapped. Government U-turn, victory for individual liberty. That was the news this week.
The government looks set to row back on plans to introduce mandatory digital ID cards.
Nearly 3 million people signed a petition, the government backed down, and Nigel Farage declared it a triumph over ghastly authoritarianism. Even Kemi Badenoch called it a rubbish policy, and she was glad to see the back of it. Papers, please? Not in Britain, not today. Except, well, that's not actually what happened. They didn't scrap digital ID. They're still building the entire system. Over £340 million in contracts have already been handed out. The infrastructure is still going ahead on schedule. The only thing they dropped was the requirement to use a specific government-issued card, and even that's temporary. So what exactly did they scrap? And where is all that money actually going? I'm Andy Roberts and this is The Fine Print, and I've done some digging following the money behind Britain's digital ID machine. And what I found wasn't a story of a government backing down. It was a story of consultants getting rich, private companies making money every time your identity gets checked, and an infrastructure being built that will make mandatory ID inevitable whether you voted for it or not. And that isn't even the worst part. Let's rewind. In September 2025, Keir Starmer stood up and made an announcement that genuinely shocked people. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that. By 2029, every worker in Britain would need a government-issued digital identity to prove their right to work. No card, no job. The backlash was immediate. A petition against mandatory digital ID gathered 2.9 million signatures, one of the largest in parliamentary history. Big Brother Watch, Liberty, Open Rights Group, 8 organisations wrote jointly to the Prime Minister warning this would fundamentally change the relationship between the population and the state. And it wasn't just the usual suspects. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch opposed it, Nigel Farage opposed it, Ed Davey opposed it, Scottish First Minister John Swinney opposed it. Over 30 MPs signed an open letter. Polling showed 63% of the British public didn't trust the government to keep their digital ID data safe. So on January 13th, the government blinked. Headlines everywhere declared victory. But here's what the headlines missed. What they actually announced was this: you won't be required to use a specific government-issued ID card, but mandatory digital right-to-work checks still happening in 2029. Gov.uk One Login, the system that will hold your biometric data, still being built. Gov.uk Wallet, the app that will store your digital driving license and who knows what else. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander went on Radio 4 to clarify. The difference, she said, is whether checks have to use one piece of ID, a digital ID card, or whether it could be an e-visa or an e-passport. So to get around it, they've just changed some definitions. They're pretty relaxed about what form that takes. Well, how reassuring. They dropped the card, not the system. And as I'm about to show you, the system is where the real money is. Let's talk about Deloitte. You know Deloitte, the consulting giant. They're everywhere in government now. NHS, welfare, defence. And they are absolutely cleaning up on digital ID. In March 2022, Deloitte won a £9 million contract to be a delivery partner for Gov.uk One Login. Reasonable enough, you might think. Government needs technical help. 7 months later, that contract has already ballooned to 12.3 million, a 37% increase in less than a year. Then came a £16 million contract in 2023. Then in July 2024, the big one, £42 million to build the Gov.uk app. 2 years, 42 million quid just for a smartphone app. Add it up, and Deloitte has secured somewhere in the region of 77 to 100 million pounds from just this single program. That's roughly half of all the contracts I could identify. And they're not alone. Experian, yeah, the credit check people, picked up 18 million quid for fraud detection and identity verification questions. PA Consulting got 17.5 million for capability delivery and technical architecture. A company called iProve, remember that name, we'll come back to them, secured £17.5 million for biometric facial verification. That's the bit where you stare into your phone camera to prove you are, well, you. Accenture's subsidiary 6.6 got 12.5 million. Accenture itself picked up another 9.5 million directly. Capgemini, £8 million. The Infrastructure and Projects Authority, the government's own watchdog, rates the whole program amber. That means significant issues exist requiring management attention. The original delivery date was 2025. That's been pushed back to 2028. The budget started at 305 million. It's now 342 million plus an additional 115 million quid allocation for this year alone. And here's the thing that really got me. A whistleblower with senior security experience at GDS revealed that development work was offshored to Romania without the knowledge of the CEO, without consultation with the National Cybersecurity Center, just quietly handed off to overseas contractors by Deloitte subcontractors, and nobody at the top knew. But wait. I said I'd come back to iProve, and what happened with them in May 2025 is genuinely extraordinary. Here's something that most people don't even realize about digital ID. The government isn't building a system where they verify your identity. They're building a system where private companies verify your identity and then charge you for the privilege. Right now, there are exactly 67 certified services under something called the Digital Identity and Attributes Trust Framework. 67 private companies authorized to check who you are. Every time an employer verifies a worker's right to work, one of these companies gets paid. Prices range from 90p for a basic check to £7.50 for more complex verifications. Now multiply that by every worker in Britain. Every time someone starts a new job, every time a landlord checks a tenant, every time you buy something age restricted. The industry is already generating £2.1 billion in UK revenue annually. And who owns these companies? That's where it gets interesting. Take on Fido. Started as an Oxford University spin-out, became one of Britain's biggest identity verification success stories. In April 2024, it was acquired by American firm Entrust for $650 million. A Minneapolis corporation now processes British identity checks. Or Jumio. They're on the certified list too. Here's their history. In 2016, Jumio filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They were bought by US private equity firm Centana Growth Partners for just $850,000. And in 2019, their founder Daniel Matt agreed to pay $17.4 million to settle SEC fraud charges after, quote, grossly overstating the company's revenues. You see, he claimed $251 million over 2 years. The actual figure was 17.2. Matt is now barred from serving as an officer or director of any US publicly traded company. But Jumio, still certified to verify British identities. Then there's iProve, the biometrics provider. I mentioned them earlier. They're backed by Somero Equity Partners. That's $70 million from Silicon Valley Private Equity. And they've received investment from JRJ Group, whose partners include Conservative Party donors. Now remember I said I'd tell you what happened in May 2025? iProve is the company that handles the facial recognition for gov.uk One login, the bit where you scan your face to prove you're really you. And in May 2025, their certification under the government's own trust framework lapsed. Just expired. Nobody watching or paying attention. Which means the entire gov.uk One login system, already serving over 12 million users across 50 plus government services, temporarily lost its certification under the government's own rules. Did they tell you that in public? No, I don't think they did. It came out through trade press reporting. iProve eventually acknowledged it. Following a standard review, our trust register certification was allowed to lapse. Standard review? The biometric heart of the national identity system just stopped being certified and nobody thought to mention it. They got recertified by October, but here's my question. If the government can't even keep track of whether its own identity contractors are properly certified, what exactly are we supposed to trust them with? And that brings us to the security warnings they've been ignoring. In September 2023, the National Cybersecurity Centre, that's GCHQ's public-facing arm, the people whose literal job is to protect Britain from cyber attacks, wrote to the Government Digital Service. The letter identified what they called severe shortcomings in one login security. The top-level risk they flagged: bulk personal data breach and risk of impersonation leading to mass fraud. They specifically noted that protected witnesses, intelligence personnel and foreign dissidents would be at particular risk if the system was compromised. A year earlier, in November 2022, the Cabinet Office's own data protection officer had warned of serious data protection failings and recommended suspending the live service. That recommendation was not followed. Meanwhile, a whistleblower with senior information security experience at GDS was documenting vulnerabilities. Their count? Over 500,000 vulnerabilities in the live service. More than 10,000 classified as critical, another 7,000 as high severity. Now, the government disputes those numbers. They say the whistleblower was counting duplicates across production accounts. After deduplication, they claim the real figures are 8 critical, 34 high, 25 medium, and 21 low. Even if we take the government's numbers, 8 critical vulnerabilities in a system designed to hold the biometric data of every worker in Britain. Is that acceptable? As of May 2025, one login meets only 21 of 39 outcomes in the NCSC's Cyber Assessment Framework. That's up from just 5 the previous year, but still nowhere near the standard for critical national infrastructure. Oh, and then of course there's the red team exercise. In March 2025, a cybersecurity firm called Cyberus conducted a simulated attack on one login. What they found was alarming enough that DCIT asked Computer Weekly not to publish the technical details. The headline finding they would confirm: privileged access to one login can be compromised without detection by security monitoring tools. Translation to human for the rest of us: hackers could get in and nobody would know. This is the system that they want to make mandatory. This is where they want to store your face, your identity documents, your biometric data. A system that can't pass its own security standards. A system where the key biometrics provider forgot to renew its certification. A system built partly by offshore contractors that the CEO doesn't even know about. And the people who built it? Let me tell you where they are now. Tom Reed was the CEO of the Government Digital Service from 2021 to 2024, the period when one login was being developed. The contracts were signed, the Romanian offshoring happened, and in June 2024, Tom Reed just left GDS. His new job? Chief Digital Officer at Serco. Yes, that Serco. The outsourcing giant, the company that in 2019 paid $22.9 million to the Serious Fraud Office to settle charges of fraud and false accounting. The charges? They'd been billing the Ministry of Justice for electronic monitoring of offenders who were, quote, already in jail, dead, or had left the country. And here's the detail that really gets me. Before running GDS, Tom Reed was Chief Digital and Information Officer at the Ministry of Justice, the same department Serco was defrauding. Now, to be clear, there's no suggestion Reed did anything improper. The appointment was reviewed and approved by the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments. These things happen all the time. That's rather the point. Mike Bracken founded GDS back in 2011. He was its first executive director, left in 2015 and co-founded a consultancy called Public Digital. In June 2025, Public Digital won a £5 million contract as strategic delivery partner for the Cabinet Office's Public Sector Reform Programme. Bracken himself was appointed non-executive director at HMRC in October 2024. It goes deeper. Emily Middleton was a partner at Public Digital from 2019 to 2024. In early 2024, while still at Public Digital, she was seconded to advise the Labour Party on digital public services reform. Public Digital paid between £65,000 and £67,000 for that secondment, effectively a donation in kind. In July 2024, after Labour won the election, Middleton was appointed Director General for Digital Centre Design at DCIT, the department overseeing digital identity policy. Are you seeing a pattern here? Government creates digital service. Staff leave to start consultancy. Consultancy advises opposition party. Opposition becomes government consultancy staff appointed to run government digital policy. Consultancy wins government contracts. If you want to know where optional digital ID leads, look at India. Aadhaar launched in 2010. It was voluntary, a way to help poor people access welfare services. A simple 12-digit number linked to your fingerprints and iris scan. Nothing sinister, just modernization. By 2017, Aadhaar was required for bank accounts, mobile phone SIMs, tax filings, school admissions, and 22 different welfare programs. The Indian Supreme Court ruled multiple times that it should remain voluntary. Those rulings were circumvented through legislative maneuvers and administrative pressure. Today, 1.4 billion Indians have Aadhaar numbers. It's technically still not mandatory. In practice, try opening a bank account without one. The human cost has been documented by human rights organizations. The Right to Food campaign recorded 57 starvation deaths between 2015 and 2018. At least 19 were directly linked to Aadhaar failures. Families denied rations because of missing numbers, failed biometric authentication, or unlinked cards. In Rajasthan alone, 2.5 million families couldn't get food rations in a single year after Aadhaar became required. And guess who built it? Accenture provided the biometric matching services, the same Accenture that now holds a £10 million cybersecurity contract for gov.uk One Login. Australia's MyGov system tells a similar story. Deloitte, Accenture, and iProve, familiar names, are primary contractors there too. Total investment $460 million. The Digital ID Act 2024 allows businesses to make digital ID mandatory for customers in limited circumstances. Estonia's e-ID card is now the country's only mandatory identification document. You cannot access healthcare, banking, contracts, or voting without it. When a 2017 security vulnerability affected 800,000 cards, the contractor, Gemalto, now owned by Thales, paid just €2.2 million in compensation. Privacy International noted the government couldn't even scrutinize Gemalto's decisions due to contractual opacity. The playbook is always the same. Launch as optional, integrate with essential services, wait for the public to forget they ever had a choice. And 2 days before Starmer announces mandatory digital ID in September, the Tony Blair Institute published a report called Time for Digital ID. TBI has received £257 million from the foundation of Larry Ellison, founder of Oracle, one of the government's biggest IT contractors. Oracle currently holds £1.1 billion in government contracts. Coincidence? Yeah, I'm sure. So let's be clear about what actually happened this week. The government didn't scrap digital ID. They retreated from one specific mandate, that you'd need a particular government-issued card to work. But the mandatory digital checks still coming in 2029. The £342 million system still being built. The 67 private companies making money every time your identity gets verified, still certified. Chief Secretary Darren Jones was refreshingly honest about the strategy. He said stepping back from mandatory use cases will deflate one of the main points of contention. Deflate the contention. Not address it, deflate it. They got caught moving too fast, so they slowed down. They didn't stop. The infrastructure continues, the contracts keep flowing, the revolving door keeps spinning. And when the next government, or this one in a year or two, decides that digital ID should be mandatory after all, everything will already be conveniently in place for it. The companies will be ready, the data will be collected, the precedent will be set. Kemi Badenoch called it a victory. Nigel Farage called it a triumph for liberty. I call it a tactical retreat. 3 million people signed a petition to stop digital ID. What they got was a press release. The machine behind it, the contracts, the consultants, the private equity firms, the biometric databases, all of that keeps building. The question was never whether Britain would have digital identity infrastructure. We already do. 12 million people are already on One Login. The question is whether anyone will be paying attention when optional quietly becomes required. India wasn't. I'm Andy, this has been The Fine Print, and if you want to check out the link between the Blair Institute and the whole ID scheme coming to life in the first place, well, check out this video here. I'll see you over there, and until the next one, take care of yourself.